Hello and welcome. Once again, continuing with your comments and questions. Sorry, the candle goes out, but the fan is a necessity, well, at this time of day, not for the heat, but for the mosquitoes, the rain having just stopped. Now, the mosquitoes become quite prolific, but the fan is sufficient just to keep them away. Gentle breeze. They can carry on about their activities elsewhere, unharmed, allowing me to speak freely and comfortably. I'll need to get some form of lantern to put the candles in that protects them not only from the fan but the breeze that comes through the doors, which is very pleasant in here, our new meditation hall, or recently refurbished old building which has formed this pleasant place for practice. So with your comments and questions, a certain amount of catching up to do here, but we have plenty of time, so I won't rush through them. The first one, is it realistic for a layman to follow the 8 precepts? I've tried to keep them, but find them extremely demanding. Do you recommend anything? Yes, indeed. So, is it realistic? Yes, it is, absolutely. And I would say, all laymen and laywomen should, if possible, try and dedicate at least one day a week. We usually say the Uposatha, that would be the full moon, the new moon, and the quarter moons in between, to reaffirm not only their 5 precepts, but dedicate 24 hours to keeping 8 precepts. Now this might more easily be done, say for instance on a Sunday, if you're in a country revolved around the weekly calendar we have become accustomed to. Monday to Friday work, Saturday, Sunday, weekends. Or if you work at weekends and your day off is during the week, take your day off as this day to dedicate to more deep practice, refraining from, and this is what the precepts are about. You say they are extremely demanding, whereas in fact they do not demand anything of anyone. The bhikkhu's precepts extend to 227 rules, specific rules, but they are not demands of us. They are not saying, thou shalt do this, thou shalt do that. Just to remind you, the 5 precepts are, the first 5 precepts all Buddhists should adhere to, are to refrain from. So that's not demanding of something or telling you to do something. It is suggesting you refrain from. Refrain from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, and the taking of intoxicants. No to-do, no demands, no doctrine. These are not really even rules, suggestions to refrain from. Squeaky Pops is demanding my attention, which I'm refraining from giving him because he's demanded rather a lot of my attention of late, especially this last night with his rat catching activities. Now there is a comment coming up later with regards to exactly that subject, so I will deal with that when we get to the comment, otherwise I will be jumping ahead. So back to our precepts and our 8 precepts, as the questioner is asking us, can we follow the 8 precepts realistically? So yes, on this day, realistically, this is very much within the possibilities of everyone, because in the 8 precepts we extend these suggestions to refraining from, so this is the 6th precept, refraining from eating after noon. That is, refraining from eating any solid food in the afternoon, after midday, the zenith of the sun, 12 o'clock noon. This is just a cut-off point. There's no spiritual mystery behind this or any other reason, but a sensible cut-off point to stop eating. It's usually before people have lunch also. So it is a good time to dedicate the rest of the day not to preparing food, not to thinking about preparing food and what you're going to eat, and certainly not to eating the food and then subsequently digesting the food, which does take a lot of energy and causes lethargy and dullness away from your practice. It frees up the afternoon, but again, it is not a demand, it's just refraining from. However, it should be said, if you're working and you're in lay life with its busy demands, then one must maintain one's energy levels and would require perhaps additional food in the afternoon. So this is why for lay practitioners it is not necessarily realistic, depending on your lifestyle, to keep 8 precepts all of the time. I was able to keep 8 precepts for many years prior to my ordination, but my lifestyle was that of a monk, albeit I wasn't ordained. I only worked the bare minimum hours a week, even as a lay practitioner, just to provide enough food for one day, one meal per day, the very most basic of accommodation. In fact, I was just living in a van outside, one set of clothes with maybe a change, one change of t-shirt, one change of trousers, and nothing more. So it was possible. I was gearing up towards ordination. I was living the anagarika life in a monastery and outside of a monastery. But ordinarily, if we have family commitments, responsibilities, social life, work life, we need to have additional food, but we can still monitor that. We can still look, are we snacking in between meals? Are we eating just because we're bored? Stick to a routine, breakfast, lunch, dinner, or just breakfast and dinner, or just lunch and dinner, whichever is your preferred pattern. You might be able to dispense with one meal. It might be superfluous to your requirements. And then the 7th precept is to refrain from beautification, perfumes, makeup, wearing fancy clothes, and to refrain from entertainment, which covers all kinds of distractions, specifically really music or movies, or even reading fiction novels, something like that. It's okay to read Dharma talks, books, biographies, the suttas as part of your studies of Buddhism. But even that, to some extent, if this is a practice you're adopting one day a week, should be put aside in order to dedicate this day to meditation. The point being that these extra precepts free up all of that time for meditation, and also help the mind remain still and clear by not being distracted by entertainment and music, by not having to present yourself attractively to the opposite sex or other people, but to just be comfortable in your simplest of clothes, perhaps remaining in your nightwear for the day. And then finally, the 8th precept is just to refrain from sleeping in high and luxurious beds. Well, that may not be practical as a lay person, but take that to mean not lazing around on comfortable furniture, and not sleeping too much, because that's what that precept is designed to encourage. Really not oversleeping or overindulging in sleep. After all, that's very easy, just to sleep all the time in a high and luxurious bed. Whereas this is less likely if you're sleeping, as I do, on a mat like this on a concrete floor. You can't really even roll over satisfactorily. So when you wake and you get up. And the purpose of that is to keep the mind and body awake and active for practice, rather than loafing around in comfy furnishings. So we refrain from sitting lazing on our sofas or comfortable armchairs, and sit on the floor of our accommodation. Take this day for a day of meditation where possible. And this is more possible and encouraged if you're already in this posture, sitting on the floor. It helps you adapt the body to this posture. So many people say, "Oh, can I use a chair? I can't sit on the floor." It's only because we're not used to it. I couldn't sit on the floor when I first went to a monastery, not comfortably anyway, but I had to. There wasn't an option. So I sat on the floor. Eventually I got used to it, but whilst I was not at the monastery, I got rid of all the furniture in my place where I was staying, and I sat on the floor. I had to. I got used to it. We just get used to comfortable, soft furnishings and sitting in chairs. So try once a week or on this day of 8 precepts not to do that. It's good for the body and it's good for the mind. So that's what I recommend, and it is possible, it is realistic. Someone here is from India and I want to become a monk. Where should I go? So I've sent you the link to the Mahabodhi Society. I hope you've received that. If you contact them, they have many branches throughout India where you can pay them a visit and discuss it with them directly. Good day, Bhante. Could you talk about equanimity? So this questioner, and it's quite useful really, but just lists these words. You know, we come up with these Pali words and says, can I talk about that? I do talk about equanimity, I think, in every talk. It comes up. Upekkha, this is the 4th of the 4 Brahma Viharas. The others being metta, loving kindness, karuna, compassion, mudita, which is joy for others, rejoicing in others' happiness and success, which is the opposite of jealousy, and equanimity, upekkha, equanimity. So can I talk about it? Well, the whole practice is geared up towards attaining to enlightenment. Now, first it might be you just want to practice meditation to calm the mind, to become peaceful after the stressful vicissitudes of life have begun to get to you. You want to escape that, have a break from that. Whereas this practice is training the mind to be able to deal with that and face those vicissitudes of life head on with the quality of equanimity, which is one of the 7 factors of enlightenment. Equanimity being not an unreactiveness, but reacting appropriately given the circumstances. So not running around like a headless chicken, screaming and shouting and panicking, but remaining calm and able to resolve a situation with wisdom. This quality only comes from practice. And what is our practice? It is simple. It is keeping those 5 precepts. That is the foundations of our practice. So when I'm talking about those precepts, I am talking about what it is that leads to developing this quality of equanimity. It isn't just about rules. These refraining from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying and taking intoxicants. And I forgot to say that that third, refraining from sexual misconduct whilst keeping 8 precepts, is changed to refraining from any sexual activity. But this foundation of sila is what leads to the development of equanimity by means of allowing us to be able to practice meditation or samadhi. So we term these precepts, the keeping of precepts, as our sila. The Pali word for moral virtue is sila. And then samadhi, a Pali word meaning concentration or focused attention, is absorbing oneself in meditation, much like absorbing oneself in reading a book or in entertainment of some kind, where all that goes on around you becomes less of a problem because you're so absorbed in what you're doing. But we just absorb or focus our conscious awareness, our attention on one meditation object. This develops those powers of concentration, the power to focus the mind, the energy to focus the mind. And this samadhi, this concentration, is another quality or factor of enlightenment. Because when we have this strengthened thinking brain muscle of concentration, the power of concentration, we are able to keep our focus on a subject without being distracted by all that's going on around us, while still being aware, and therefore act accordingly, appropriately, given the circumstances, with equanimity. So as you see, all of this goes towards building this quality of upekkha, equanimity. The foundations of practice, moral virtue, and then the simply discipline of sitting and meditating for at least an hour in the morning when you wake up, and an hour in the evening before you go to sleep. And if you have the opportunity during the day, half an hour here, half an hour there, or an hour, or on your days off, 3 hours sitting, just practicing to concentrate. What this leads to is, without even thinking about it, it leads to samasati, right mindfulness. It keeps your mind concentrated, your thinking brain rather, concentrated on what's happening now in the present moment, here, in what you're doing and what is happening around you, and whilst focused on that, you are exercising mindfulness. This is mindfulness, being aware in the present moment, here and now, of each and every action of body, speech and mind you are doing, and all that you're seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and the thoughts you are having. Being aware of those as they're happening in the present moment, rather than recalling and remembering all that's gone on prior to that moment, the past, and imagining all that might happen after that moment, the future. Because the past cannot be changed and the future hasn't happened yet and may not. So it is the present moment and your actions of body, speech and mind that are so very important. And this is mindfulness. And this skill, this quality of samasati, mindfulness, another of the factors of enlightenment, is so very important. It is why we hold it in such high regard, because it is this that leads to wisdom, panya. We're seeing in reality the truth of existence, how experience of life is in every detail all we experience. Everything is impermanent. All conditioned things are impermanent. Anicca is the Pali word for that. All conditioned things are unsatisfactory, dukkha, and all conditioned things are out of our control, or not self. Even this physical body and this thinking brain, we have no real control over. We can only create causes and conditions for its perceived comfort, but we cannot control disease, illness that might afflict it. We cannot control emotions, positive or negative, that may come and go in the thinking brain and may consequently even affect our health. This is going to just happen, but we can observe it and put a little distance between that which is observing this and the physical body and thinking brain, focusing on citta, the mind, the witness of this, the observer. This development, this overall practice, is what leads to upekkha, equanimity. It's very much one of the most important factors of enlightenment. But like all of these lists, Buddhist lists, these words, the 7 factors of enlightenment, or the 4 noble truths, or the noble eightfold path, these are all to be practiced holistically in conjunction with each other, and all interrelate with each other as representative of the nature of karma, in that all of our actions of body, speech and mind, actions, the Pali word for which is karma, have results, the Pali word for which is vipaka. So karma vipaka is the results of our actions, being the actions of our body, speech and mind, which is all we have to do anything with, isn't it? And that is going to have, or be, the cause, pacaya, a Pali word again, the cause for the consequences, the results, vipaka. So mindfulness, equanimity, concentration, wisdom, these are all factors on the path. All factors of enlightenment, to attain to which we follow this path of sila, samadhi, panya, moral virtue, meditation, the development of wisdom, coming from keeping the precepts and focusing the mind, concentration. So the very important thing that we do, if we want equanimity, is we keep precepts and we meditate. Now if you're not keeping precepts or you're not meditating, it doesn't matter how much I talk about equanimity, it's just talk, it's just words, which are useless. It's convention. It doesn't matter how much you study upekkha, read about it. It's just stories, it's words on a page. We develop it as a quality, like we develop the quality of vipassana, seeing clearly. Through samadhi, through concentration, we've developed mindfulness. So after periods of absorbed, focused samadhi, which can lead to blissful states, peaceful states, which is why many begin to practice meditation in the first instance, we come out refreshed with a clear, empty thinking brain, a clear mind, a peaceful mind, able to see more clearly the characteristics of then what follows through sense contact, through experience, the characteristics ever present in all conditioned things of anicca, dukkha, anatta. All the more clearly. This is the truth of what vipassana means, to see clearly. And in that, if something breaks that we were very fond of, or even when someone dies that we love dearly and was close to us, we'll have equanimity. Because although it might come out of the blue, be a shock, be unexpected, we know through the wisdom we have developed that all things are impermanent. Those we love, we will be parted from as they will be parted from us. All conditioned things are subject to anicca, dukkha, anatta. This is a foundation for equanimity. So, I hope that's enough on equanimity for you, mate. How to deal with boredom. Well, don't deal with it. Appreciate it. What is boredom? Ask yourself, what is it? It's either, and usually, you'll answer to yourself to that question, what is boredom? So firstly, you have an emotion, don't you? You feel bored, which is linked really to aversion. It's not wanting things to be the way they are. So one of these defilements, the core defilements, root defilements that lead to our suffering, our dissatisfaction in life, is hatred. And in its varying degrees, from just disliking to hating, or even, well, preferring not to really despising and hating, then it all comes under the category of ill will or disliking or aversion or hatred. We have greed, we have hatred and delusion. And if we also have still this defilement of greed, wanting always something rather than what we need, then when there is nothing to be done, when there is nothing to be had, when we don't need to feed ourselves to be tasting, when we don't need to be experiencing anything, we'll have this sense of aversion to that. We're not able to satisfy greed without simply saying, I've had enough of doing nothing, I'm going to distract myself with something else, by doing something, by watching something, by entertaining myself with something. This question probably comes about as a result of you practicing or trying to practice. And finding it boring because there's no stimulation. If you're keeping those 8 precepts, at first the afternoon may seem long and boring because you're used to not just being in the present moment with mindfulness and seeing what there really is to be seen, which isn't boring because you have so much to look into, to delve into. So we don't deal with boredom, but we see and we understand what is boredom. Now, if you just have nothing to do, no money to spend, nowhere to go, no people to talk to, you might call this boredom. But if you see that as the opportunity to take that solitude and to use that time to practice meditation, and if you're keeping precepts, then this will no longer be boring. It will be a great opportunity to practice. And that's all we're talking about here. And the most common obstacle in the way of practice for people is time and availability to sit and meditate. So people say, but that's just the defilements speaking. That's just excuses. Because people just don't want to be bothered to meditate. Because we all have time to meditate. We can all find an hour at the beginning of the day. We just wake up an hour earlier. We can all find an hour at the end of the day. We just go to sleep an hour later. If you were watching a good movie, you'd stay up an hour later to see the end. If you were going away on holiday and had to catch an early flight, you'd get up an hour earlier to do that. You wouldn't suffer in the meantime through tiredness and become ill and die. No. Because you had a reason, a good cause, you think. Entertainment, distraction. But when you come to see the satisfaction that is to be had and all that can be generated through the practice of samadhi, meditation, that too will be enough encouragement just to have a couple of hours less sleep. And after all, we're trying to discourage too much sleep. If you sleep 12 hours every night, that's half your life asleep, wasted, gone. Yeah, you might consider it great. I love sleep. I want to just sleep all of my life. Okay. But Buddha means awake, not asleep. You may say, I have lucid dreams, it's all mystical, it's just imagination, it's just dreams, it's just that. It's not developing any of these qualities we're referring to. It's not leading towards enlightenment. There were no sleeping Buddhas. Buddha means awake, the awakened one. Our Buddha in this Buddha Sasana encouraged us to sleep little, eat little or just enough, and really speak little. So you're turning this idea of boredom on its head, not dealing with it. You're just seeing it with a different perspective as the great opportunity to practice. If you're finding the practice itself boring, then this is because you're not practicing in accordance with the instructions the Buddha is giving us. So I think if you look back at the recent weeks, there's a video on how to meditate and just the simple instructions the Buddha gives us on anapanasati, how to watch the breath in meditation. When you are able to do this, well, we're all able to do this correctly. When you have the inclination, you make the effort to do this, to practice this, you will almost instantaneously see the benefits of it and reap those benefits, the results of that practice. Become invigorated, not only while sitting in meditation, but with the increased level of mindfulness throughout the rest of your day. A heightened sense of awareness, conscious awareness, vijnana. Colours will become more vivid, sounds brighter, tastes deeper, more complex, feelings, you'll become more sensitive. But more importantly, your thinking brain, thought process, will become focused, wiser, more ready to accept all conditions you experience with the truth behind them. Therefore, understand them with equanimity, with mindfulness, but also with contentment, rather than wishing things to be other than they are, letting go of those unwholesome desires to change what cannot be changed, and accept that your experience is just that, and it will change of its own accord. And this is contentment, and from this is born happiness. Real happiness, not distraction from what we don't like, but focused joy on all we experience. So where, even in a very simple room, where is boredom? What is it? How is it manifested? It's manifested through our own thinking process. We've given it this word, we've invented this word to describe an emotion of not having enough to do. Whereas most people's obstacles to the practice is saying, I have too much to do. So you have a wonderful opportunity there. Not something to deal with, but to be appreciated and used. Enjoy. Someone suggests bug screens might be a useful idea. Well, mosquito nets, bug screens, all this kind of thing are very much used in these parts of the world. Personally, I've always found that if you have the availability of a fan, or you're sitting outside where there's a breeze, so you're sitting on the coast by the sea, then the bugs won't trouble you. Once you start enclosing where you're staying, your room you're in, with nets and screens, you're more often than not trapping the bugs inside. And you'll often see that's when people start slapping and killing mosquitoes, breaking those precepts, or using sprays and this kind of thing that harms them, because they're unable to get away, they can't escape. They'll leave you alone when there are fans and there's places to go. But yes, I'm not going to start shutting up all of the whole roof is open. The roof does not touch the top of the walls. So to completely enclose this building, one would have to create netting around the whole structure. And then it only takes one mosquito to get in. It will find your ear and buzz in your ear, regardless of how many screens or how much netting you have. Now, like I said, there are many mosquitoes here at this time of the day. The rain has just finished. It's their peak time. There's water on the ground. But I'm sitting under a fan, which I hope isn't making too much noise. It's quite quiet. I do also have a mosquito coil, which is a repellent, albeit it's probably unnecessary. All the doors and everything and the windows are open around me, as is the roof. I can see the mosquitoes in the distance around the lights. They're not bothering me. And if they do, I let them take their little bit of blood and go. We develop equanimity rather than trying to run away and hide from everything. If I'm sleeping outside or sleeping somewhere where there's mosquitoes, literally I wrap this whole robe. This is what I use. This is my bedding as well as what I wear. It's all I have. I don't have bedding, sheets, pillows, mattresses, blankets, any of this stuff. It would just be damp and mouldy very quickly if I had such things here. But I just don't. It's not necessary for a monk. We have these 3 robes. The outer robe, the double thickness one, I use as a headrest or a pillow. And this upper robe here, I can wrap around my entire body and over my head and still breathe okay. And it protects me from mosquitoes, flies and bugs in the night. But as many screens, whatever screens you have, they'll get in. You have to open the door to get in yourself. Many will fly in at that point in time. Then what do you do? So thank you for your suggestion, but I think I've lived in Asia now for long enough to know from my own experience it's just a headache and trouble if you try to screen them out. If you have a hermetically sealed little room in a hotel or something like that, then it's feasible. You've got one window, one door, and there's usually a sort of an ante-room, a hallway or a porchway, something outside of those, so it can work. But in these open air environments, it's not so practical. So, why haven't you, here we go. Why haven't you stopped the cat from killing the creature? Also, should we allow such acts when we are witnessing, or should we try to save the creatures? I'm glad that came up, because it's yes. So right, let me just read that again. Why haven't you stopped the cat from killing the creature? Okay, so I think there was one of the cats was killing. None of these are my cats. They're just other people's cats that come and go in my kuti and in here, and have become friends. I give them little names. Just that's not their names. I give them little nicknames, which reflect their personalities. They all have different personalities, and it's just it's probably a defilement of mine, coming from one of those defilements. Delusion, I should think, that I believe they respond to those names, whereas they're just responding to the sound of a human voice and thinking, food, potential food, and safety and love. So, why haven't I stopped the cat from killing the creature? I think it was killing some flying creature, or trying to, whilst we were talking. Well, I think it was either too late or it wasn't practical to do so. But where it is practical to do so, and where I can, I do try my best to not teach or train them, but help them not to kill. So last night I heard some rustling around and had an inclination as to what it might be, and it was indeed Squeaky Pops wrestling with a rat in my washroom area, which often happens in the night. It'll find one outside in the jungle, bring it in, and then play with it. So it isn't necessarily even for food, although they do, if you don't attend to the situation, do devour most of the internal organs of these creatures. But the playing with it and the ripping it apart is all very unpleasant. So in this instance, I do try and rescue the rat, popping Squeaky Pops out of a window or putting it outside and quickly catching the rat before Squeaky Pops very quickly finds its way back in again and tries to continue its game. And this can take up many of my hours, and does so. But yes, I do try and save the creature. And when we're witnessing, should we try and save the creatures if it's appropriate to do so? Now in this case, it is to some extent interfering with nature, because the cat has to learn, if I wasn't here, to give it some alternative source of food, to feed itself and to feed its family and to feed its children. So, or to feed itself so it can feed its children through breastfeeding or whatever, cats, or whatever you call it with cats. So one doesn't interrupt that, doesn't interfere with that process. If you have a domestic cat that you adopt from its birth until it dies, you feed it every day, it lives in your home and doesn't go out hunting, this is okay. But if these are feral wild cats, where you can, you feed them, and that then gives them the opportunity not to have to go out and kill. But you have to accept that it is nature that they will go out and kill, and retain those skills, hone those skills, if you can call them skills, but you know, that natural instinct to gather food, hunter-gathering instinct, which is after all their only way to survive and for their offspring to survive. So we don't interfere with that. So as long as we're not interfering with that, we can, yes, save the rat, save the bird, the butterfly. And one does this carefully, maintaining the balance of nature. If you can rescue the rat and then take it far away so that the cat would take and then come back and give the cat some alternative food. It's had the chase, it's had the training, it's come back, it's getting the food. Not as a reward, but so as it's distracted enough for the rat to have time to get away. So, yes, but you know, what are we doing? What are we saying here? Why haven't you stopped the cat from killing the creature? And also, should we allow such acts? This is just nature. There are humans killing humans all over the world. Killing is unfortunately the worst side of hatred, the worst side of delusion, and coming as a result of greed. So it's the worst example of our defilements, greed, hatred, and delusion in manifestation of murder, of killing, even genocide. It's all coming from greed and hatred and delusion. So the best thing we can do is this practice to get rid of our own greed, hatred, and delusion, so as we can keep our own precepts of not killing. The first precept is to refrain from killing. You can expand upon that to harming any living creatures or sentient beings. But specifically, if nothing was to kill, then that would be as a result of there being no greed, hatred, and delusion. Therefore, all sentient beings being enlightened. Now, in the animal kingdom, it's very difficult for their survival. This is why it's very difficult for a cat or a dog or any hunter-gatherer animal in nature to attain to enlightenment without rebirth into a realm whereby they can avoid killing and keep precepts and see the fruits of practice, having listened to or been in contact with Dharma. So monastery cats, monastery dogs, monastery animals, we, where possible, interrupt any killing that might be going on. We keep them fed, and we're therefore giving them an opportunity that they might not ordinarily have out in the wild to lead a better life in that existence, in that lifetime, which may well lead to a better rebirth, into an opportunity whereby they may be reborn into the human realm and have contact with Dharma and be able to keep precepts and be able to progress towards enlightenment. So whilst monastery dogs and cats mightn't necessarily get enlightened in this lifetime, speaking of which, here comes one now, they are given the opportunity to live a life that may lead to a better rebirth, into a life where they can attain to enlightenment. But we cannot assume that. It can always be the case that through previous lives, all their parami has qualities that have been built up, are leading towards enlightenment. But through some unpaid bad karma of the past, in past distant lives that cannot be recalled, they may have to suffer a short life or a long life as a cat. But as a result of those good qualities, have been born as a cat into a monastery environment such as this. And this cat that's just come in, Spotty Dotty, it's Squeaky Pops who likes to do the killing, but this cat that comes in, Spotty Dotty, I've never seen killing. So maybe Spotty Dotty has the parami of previous lifetimes and qualities and can refrain from killing during this existence, in this lifetime, in the monastery, which I fear may be a short existence because it looks like a rather unhealthy cat, despite it having the same food and opportunities. Physically, it looks always a bit weak and frail. And that does give me some understanding, not belief, This isn't mysterious to me, rebirth. It's par for the course. It's part of nature. It's something we come to understand, not believe in, through our own experience of what we see within this lifetime and the experience of our own lifetime. And there, to me, is evidence of a creature born into the form of a cat, albeit it might be only for a short lifespan, but will surely go on to a better rebirth. And if, now she's making an appearance, Spotty Dotty can refrain from killing throughout this lifetime, could even, as he's come to listen to Dharma now, become enlightened. Who knows? So yeah, when witnessing this, of course we should try to save the creatures if we can, as long as it's not detrimental to the natural order of life. It's always okay to save a creature from being killed, but do make sure that you don't prevent or interrupt the natural process. So this, remember, a cat you might see killing a rat, maybe killing that rat because it needs nutrition to feed 6 other cats. So you stop it killing the rat, 6 of its children, kittens, may die of starvation, you know? So your interruption could cause killing, not directly, but be the cause and consequence for a number of deaths. So you must be very careful about the balance of nature. And yes, you rescue the rat and you give the cat some alternative nutrition, some food. And that's okay. Wisdom, mindfulness, equanimity. It's all there, isn't it, in our actions of body, speech and mind. It's all coming from this practice of Sila, Samadhi, Panya. It's helping nature. It's helping the world. It helps the universe. So thank you for that comment and that question. And Spotty Dotty's gone to sit in the doorway now, knowing that the time for feeding is coming up, I expect. On that note, I hope there's something useful there you can put into practice. If not, just let it go, don't worry about it, but please come back again. Keep sending in your comments and questions. And until next time, be happy and stay well. Sukhi Hotu.